Hello and welcome to Psychology School. I hope you all are safe and fine. Today I am going to start the next topic of Chapter 2, Self and Personality of Class 12 Psychology. But before starting the new topic, let's have a look to the correct answers of the questions of previous video class. So here are the answers. The first answer is type D, second answer is type C, third answer is Raymond Cattell, and the fourth is psychoticism versus sociability. Now the fifth answer is surface traits are less consistent than source traits, and they are easily observable and are influenced by source traits, for example restlessness, fearfulness or shyness. The next answer is central traits are the traits used frequently for describing one's personality. These are general characteristics of an individual and are less dominating in one's personality. For example, honesty, shyness, anxious, kindness, etc. Next is the answer number 7. The difference between the trait and the type approaches. The trait approach focuses on the specific psychological attributes or traits for identifying and describing the personality of individual, and it also focuses on the description of the building blocks of personality, whereas type approach emphasizes that human personality can be classified into a clearly defined type and each person can be put in one or the other type according to his or her personality characteristic. Next answer is answer number 8, which are the dimensions of Ising's theory of personality. These dimensions are well explained here. Neuroticism versus emotional stability. Next is extroversion versus introversion. And the third dimension is psychoticism versus sociability. The answer number 9 is source traits are stable characteristics of personality and they can't be observed directly and are at the deeper level of personality. So they are the building blocks of personality, for example outgoing or reserved, etc. Next answer is answer number 10. Cardinal traits are the most active and dominant traits. They are very small in number, 1 or 2, but enough to color the personality and associated with the name of the person so strongly that they are known by his or her trait. Example, Mahatma Gandhi's non-violence and Mother Teresa's kindness. Now moving on to the next topic of the chapter, which is psychodynamic approach. Now actually psychodynamic approach involves a search of needs, motives and impulses which are often hidden and how they interact to produce the individual's behavior. So this approach is a very popular approach to study personality, and Sigmund Freud was the first theorist of this approach. He developed his psychoanalytic theory during his clinical practice and he was a physician. So in his scientific career, he used hypnosis method to treat patients suffering from various nervous disorders. Eventually, he discovered the method of free association, in which a patient is asked to say and share everything that comes to mind. Now, he also used the methods dream analysis and analysis of errors to understand the internal thoughts and ideas and overall functioning of the human mind. So, according to Freud, human mind plays an important role in directing one's behavior. So, he compared the human mind to an iceberg, and according to him, mind can be divided into 3 compartments or 3 levels of consciousness. So, there are 3 divisions: conscious, preconscious and unconscious. So, the first level is conscious. Now, according to Freud, as human mind is just like an iceberg. So, the small part that shows above the surface of the water is conscious, and that means our current awareness. It includes all the thoughts, feelings, actions of which people are aware. The second level is preconscious, which means all the information that is not currently available or on our mind, but that we could bring into our awareness if we attend to it closely or if we are called upon to do so. So let's take an example that if someone asks, what did you do last Sunday? So In this example, you will try to recall the activities which you performed last Sunday. Now, the third level is unconscious, which is the most important part of the mind according to Freud. Now, the much larger mass or the part of the iceberg below the water represents the unconscious part, which includes all our wishes, desires and thoughts or feelings that we are not aware of. So, as you can see in the picture of iceberg, the conscious is that part which is above the surface of the water, that is conscious part. Preconscious is the middle part and the unconscious is the hidden part of the iceberg. Now, according to Freud, the unconscious level is like a storehouse or reservoir of impulses, instincts, ideas or wishes and needs that leads to psychological conflicts and affect our thoughts and behavior. So these desires cannot be expressed openly and therefore they are repressed. So we repress our ideas, memories, feelings or motives that are especially disturbing or unacceptable. So this repression of unsatisfied drives leads to conflicts and abnormal behavior. So in order to discover this unconscious part of mind, Freud developed a therapeutic procedure called psychoanalysis. And he argued that with the analysis of forgetting, dreams, humor or jokes, mispronunciations or slips of the tongue, the unconscious part can be uncovered. So the main aim of psychoanalysis is to bring the repressed unconscious materials to consciousness, and it helps people to live in a more self-aware and healthy way. Now moving on to the next topic, that is structure of personality. So according to Freud, there are three main elements of personality, which are it, ego and superego. So these are only concepts, they are not physical structures, and they exist in the unconscious mind as forces, and they interact to govern human behavior. So the first element is it. Now it is hidden in the deep layers of unconscious mind. As you can see clearly in the picture that it is hidden in the unconscious part of mind. Now it includes the most basic biological impulses or drives, such as the need to eat, to drink, to avoid pain, and sexual desires. So Freud believed that aggression is also a basic biological drive, and it works on the pleasure principle. It means that people seek pleasure and try to avoid pain, and it starts developing from the birth of a child. Now it has no moral and social values. It doesn't care about the right and wrong things and considers only the gratification or satisfaction of the primitive needs and desires. Let's take an example that if a child is hungry and the child demands for the food to satisfy his need of hunger, irrespective of the situation. So this behavior of the child is guided by the child's it. Freud believed that sexual and aggressive drives were the most important instinctual determinants of personality throughout life. Now coming on to the another element, which is ego. Now it cannot be allowed to satisfy the needs without any moral value and rules. So the second system, that is ego, grows and develops. So ego seeks to satisfy an individual's needs and desires according to the reality, and therefore ego works on the principle of reality. Now ego directs the it towards the more appropriate ways of behaving and satisfying its need. So ego is the executive part of the mind which controls and directs it in selecting and deciding what needs have to be satisfied and in which way these needs are to be satisfied. So, ego develops as the young child learns to consider the demands of reality. Let's take an example that if a child wants to eat chips and it tells him to eat chips immediately by snatching his friend's packet of chips without asking or following any moral values, he can satisfy his need simply. So, this is the id which works on the pleasure principle. But ego, which works on the reality principle, will direct the child to ask for permission for eating chips. And this is the best way to satisfy his needs. So we can conclude that it is impulsive, it is demanding and unrealistic, whereas ego obeys the reality principle and therefore it is patient and reasonable. So overall, ego focuses that the gratification of impulses must be delayed until the situation is appropriate. So the third element of personality is superego. Now superego judges whether the actions are right or wrong or good or bad. Superego tells the id and ego whether gratification of a need in particular manner is ethically or morally correct or not. So it is the internalized representation of the values and morals of society. For example, that if a child wants to eat chips and asks his mother to give him to eat, so child's superego will tell him that this behavior is morally correct and socially acceptable. And this way of satisfying need will not create any fear or anxiety or any guilt in child's personality. So child's superego develops in response to parental rewards and punishments. Initially, parents control their children's behavior directly through reward and punishment. And by following parental standards into the superego, a child brings behavior under his or her control. So superego does not only postpone the gratification, it tries to block it permanently. So according to Freud, these three forces, that is id, ego and superego, are competing forces and determine individuals' functioning. So some individuals who have strong ego, they may have balanced personality, and whereas some individuals have strong id, so they may engage in immoral activities and socially unacceptable things. And some may have strong superego, so they may develop a strong moralistic and judgmental personality. They will not accept anything bad or immoral. Now, Freud also gave the concepts of life instincts and death instincts, and he assumed that id is directed by these two forces. So life instinct provides a burning desire and positive need to remain alive and lead the life in a satisfactory way, and needs such as hunger, thirst and sex fall in the category of life instincts. And the form of energy by which these life instincts perform their work is called libido. So, libido works on the pleasure principle and seeks immediate gratification, whereas death instinct builds up a negative attitude towards life and guides one's behavior towards destruction, revolt, aggression or detachment. And Freud paid less attention to the death instincts and focused more on the life instincts. Now moving on to the next topic, that is defense mechanisms. According to Freud, defense mechanism is a way of reducing anxiety which arise from unacceptable thoughts or feelings. So we all have thoughts, feelings, impulses memories or wishes that are very difficult to deal. So people deal with these difficult feelings by using these defense mechanisms. And all defense mechanisms have two things in common. First one is they reduce anxiety by denying or distorting reality. And the second one is they operate unconsciously so that the person is not aware of what is taking place. So Freud has described many different kinds of defense mechanisms. These are repression, projection, denial, reaction formation and rationalization. So moving on to the explanation of these defense mechanisms. The first one is repression. So repression is one of the most important defense mechanisms, and this is a process by which a person forgets any thought or feeling that arouses anxiety by pushing it down into the unconscious level. So when people repress a feeling or desire, they become totally unaware of that wish or desire. In other words, we can say that we forget and then we forget that what we forgot. An example can be an adult who cannot recall being abused as a child, or when a person says that I don't know why I did that. So here some repressed feeling or desire is expressing itself. Now moving on to the projection. Projection is a way of coping with one's unwanted motives by shifting them onto someone else. So people attribute their own traits to others or blame others. An example can be a person having strong aggressive tendencies may see other people as acting in an excessively aggressive way towards her or him. Next is denial. In this mechanism, a person totally denies reality or refuses to accept reality or facts. An example can be a parent who cannot accept the death of a child, or a person who is suffering from psychological problems denies by saying that I have no problems. Now the next is reaction formation. So in this way of coping, the person reduces anxiety by adopting behaviors just opposite to her or his true feelings. An example can be a mother who is against the demands of her child deals her child with kindness. So the last defense mechanism is rationalization. Now in rationalization, a person tries to make unreasonable feelings and behaviors seem reasonable and acceptable. To avoid anxiety or guilt feeling, people make excuses by giving a reason which is different from the real one for what they are doing. An example can be a student gives a long series of weak excuses for failing to meet a deadline. So these were the main defense mechanisms given by Freud, and everyone used these defense mechanisms time to time in our daily life. But if a person comes to depend on them too much, then these defensive patterns may be harmful. They do not solve the real problems, but only reduce anxiety. And according to Freud, our personality starts developing from childhood, and its main aspects are established early. So these aspects remain stable throughout life and cannot be changed easily. He believed that during the first 5 years of life, the individual progresses or goes through several developmental stages that affect his or her personality. So he proposed a 5-stage theory of personality development, and it is also known as psychosexual stages of development. Now, any problem encountered at any stage may hinder development and therefore affects person's life. So following are the stages: oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latency stage, and the last one is genital stage. Now, the first stage is oral stage, which starts from birth and ends up to age 1. So, in this stage, the infant or a newborn baby obtains pleasure through the mouth, and mouth is the focus of pleasure during the first year. So it is through the mouth that the baby obtains food that reduces hunger A newborn baby achieves oral gratification by feeding and contact with the mother, mouthing new objects, biting and babbling. So any dissatisfaction or oversatisfaction of needs at this stage may result in difficulty in development of personality. Next stage is anal stage, which starts about 2 to 3 years of age. In this stage, a child learns to respond to the demands of the society. And this stage occurs when parents are giving their children toilet training and teaching them to avoid prohibited behavior connected with the urination and defecation. Now in this stage, the focus of certain pleasurable feelings is the anal area of the body. Now the next stage is phallic stage, and the time period of this stage is 3 to 5 years of age. Now in this stage, the focus of pleasure is on the genitals, and the children begin to observe the differences between males and females. So according to Freud, during this stage, the male child experiences Oedipus complex and the female child experiences the Electra complex. So these two terms, Oedipus and Electra, are originated from Greek mythology. So in Oedipus complex, the male child develops love for the mother and aggression towards the father. He also develops the fear of punishment by the father, and this resolution of the conflict takes place when boy accepts his father's relationship with his mother and boy tries to become like his father. Now in girls, there is Electra complex. So girls develops attachment and love for the father and tries to marry him and raise a family. Now the girl realizes that if her mother will come to know that she possesses these kinds of feelings for her father, her mother will give punishment, and this thought develops fear of punishment. So the girl begins to identify with mother and copy her behavior as a means of getting her father's affection. Now comes the latency stage, and this period lasts from 7 years until puberty. So child continues to grow physically and learns more about the world. Children become less concerned with their bodies and turn their attention to the skills needed for coping with their environment. So in this stage, sexual urges are repressed. Now the last stage is genital stage. So this stage starts from adolescence and continues throughout the rest of life. So here the person attains maturity in psychosexual development. The sexuality, fears and repressed feelings and memories from earlier childhood periods are once again exhibited, and people learn to deal with the members of the opposite sex in a socially and sexually mature way. So according to Freud, the special problems at any stage could arrest or fixate development and have a lasting effect on personality. Freud has mentioned two important processes in the development of personality. So failure of a child to pass successfully through a stage leads to fixation to that stage. And this is the first process, that is fixation. Now let's take an example that if a child who does not pass successfully through the phallic stage fails to resolve the Oedipus complex and may still feel aggressive toward the parent of the same sex. So he may consider all men to be hostile and may like to relate to females in a dependable relationship. Now the another process is regression, which takes a person back to an earlier stage. So people tend to regress to a stage upon which they have been previously fixated. Now let's take an example that if a child who is frightened by the first day at school may indulge in behavior like weeping, sucking the thumb, hanging on to the teacher or hiding in a corner. So in this situation, people display behaviors typical of a less mature stage of development. And when life gets stressful, children and adults may regress to an earlier stage of development. So this was all about the most influential and important theory of personality given by Sigmund Freud. And now here are some sample questions You can give answers of these questions in the comment box. We will provide the correct answers of these questions in next video class. So thank you very much. Stay home, stay safe and keep learning.